Greetings, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar. My name is Uday Bhaskar. I'm a retired sailor, and we are very glad from the SPS to be partnering with the MRC in Pune in putting this webinar together. So we were just comparing notes a few minutes before we formally cast off, as they would say in sailor speak. And number one, to thank all of you who have joined at 15:30 on a working day. I would say that this is perhaps a reflection of your interest and commitment to the theme that we propose to discuss. So I want to acknowledge all of you, whether you're here on only on audio or with your images. I'm not able to see all of you, but I do have a list of the number of participants who have already come on board. So again, welcome and thanks both on behalf of the MRC and the SPS. That having been said, the theme, all of you have seen it in the notice that had been sent out along with the concept note. It's UDA. And in lighter vein, we were discussing those over the last couple of days with some of our younger colleagues in various platforms. And there was a fairly innocent but earnest question saying, what is UDA? Is it an app? And I said, no, it's not an app, but why don't you join tomorrow and you'll get to know more about it. Maybe, I think, Arnab, there is a case to create a UDA app now. But underwater domain awareness is, of course, the specific focus today. And I think in a more generic sense, it's about the underwater domain. And just a very broad point that till recently, UD was unknown, both as an expression and there was, shall we say, not much interest in the underwater domain itself, what was below the water. It's in the last decade plus, I would say, that technology has enabled a greater comprehension and understanding of the underwater domain. And it has multiple relevances, layered relevances. You know, there is a broader ontological point, if you will, about the oceans of the world, the maritime domain. That number one, of course, is empirical, that the earth is more water than soil, or more land, more water than land, yet it is the earth. And the oceanic spaces, the sea spaces, the water bodies collectively are primeval. I mean, they are the basis of all life. That, of course, is the ontological observation. And in a related sense, in the modern context, you know, we can divide this into three baskets, the relevance of the oceans and the seas. One, of course, is connectivity and everything that comes with it. And now, of course, we are aware that there is a large strategic and security dimension. So there is an axiomatic kind of connotation that when you say UDA, underwater domain awareness, the specialist thinks about submarines, deterrence, and all the security strategic related issues. But there is another basket or another vertical, which is about the relevance of the water bodies of the world, the oceans, the seas, in terms of human security, the blue economy, trade, economy, fisheries, you know, the entire gamut of how we harvest the ocean for its multiple utility and exploitation or harnessing. I think the word harnessing is better than exploitation of resources in a sustainable manner. And that leads to or segues to the next kind of relevance, which is the connection between the oceans of the world and the health of our planet. Whether it is climate warming or the nature of the water bodies and its salinity and its ability to sustain life. You know, you could call this the geophysical. And then you have the geoeconomic, which is trade, economy, blue economy, fishing, the works, minerals, and so on and so forth. And the last is the security and strategic domain. So the UD, the underwater domain, is relevant, as I said, in a very layered way across the spectrum. And understanding more about it, as also can we tease out certain strands for Prime Minister Modi's advocacy of SAGAR, the security and growth for all in the region, which has become a national objective. We thought that this particular webinar today could throw some light on these issues And we have a very eminent panel. I'm very glad to welcome and introduce in our midst Dr. Ajay Kumar, the lead speaker for today. He's a former Defense Secretary, an IAS officer from the Kerala cadre, has held many important positions in both the state and the GOI. And he was a very hands-on Defense Secretary. If I remember right, he has the longest stint as Defense Secretary in the Government of India and steered many important initiatives in the last few years. Post-retirement, unusually, there are not too many like him, he has moved into academia and he is now a visiting professor at the IIT in Kharagpur and in other places. Dr. Kumar, welcome. The last time I heard you in Goa and you sounded like a black belt in matters maritime. So I'm sure you'll do justice. But
Thank you, Commodore. And I can assure you that it's all put up, there is no inherent. So he was looking like black belt, it was all put on.
You have a
Thank
great,
you.
I would say, water table on this. So my only request is please try and, distill your knowledge on the subject in under 15 minutes. That would be very welcome.
Sure.
And along with Dr. Kumar, I have great pleasure in welcoming and introducing a colleague from the Navy, Vice Admiral Abhay Karve, retired as the Flag Officer Commanding in Chief in the Southern Naval Command. Currently, he is a member of the AFT, the Armed Forces Tribunal, the Bombay bench. And as I said, he's an ASW officer of great distinction in the Navy and has contributed significantly to this particular discipline. And to set out the template for the underwater domain and what the awareness part is all about, let me also welcome and introduce Dr. Arnab Das, retired from the Navy, Commander Arnab Das, but now he's an academic in his own right and has set up the MRC in Pune, the Maritime Research Center, which is now acknowledged as one of the lead institutions in India, if not regionally, for matters pertaining to the underwater domain. All of them, as I said, are people who know too much on the subject, but they also are able to compress and convey their wisdom in very, I would say, compact. Great pleasure in inviting you and giving you all of 12 minutes. I'm a strict, timekeeper, so your time starts now. On that note, I will mute myself and go off so that there is no disturbance. If anybody wants to convey anything, please go to the chat box and tell the administrator, they'll convey it. On that note, Dr./Commander Arnab Das, all yours.
Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate this partnership with SPS and your mentorship to me. And I have exchanged a lot of ideas with you, and you have been very kind to fine-tune many of them and give me a lot of good advice. And also to the lead speaker and Admiral Karve sir for being very kind. And Admiral Karve sir has been with us for a long time, and he has given us a lot of inputs and also kind of steered this in the Indian Navy for a very, very long time. Dr. Ajay Kumar sir, thank you very much for joining us. And also Tarun Basu sir for this partnership and taking things forward. So I'll not take much time in introduction and go right into the UDA domain and the UDA framework that we have worked on. First important thing I would like to highlight is the new global order. The entire strategic interactions have now come to the tropical waters. The Indo-Pacific, by definition itself, is the tropical waters of the Indian Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And the underwater domain behaves very differently. It is very important for us to realize. And the technology or the know-how that we import from the West has severe degradation in these waters. And I would like to put a number to it, which is about 60%. Now, going forward from a strategic security perspective and even from a holistic perspective, we need to balance these three aspects, people, economy, and nature, if we want to really, or that is the larger governance framework that we desire. When we say people, the coastal and the riverine communities have to be kept in mind when we talk about security and both growth. And an inclusive governance mechanism needs to be built where their interest, their understanding of the environment is also factored when we look at the futuristic development. Second is economy. Of course, without economic growth, there is no purpose. So there is a lot that, as Uday sir has already mentioned, 75% of this earth is water. And I would say 90+% of the resources are below the surface of the water. So the importance of underwater expertise or underwater domain awareness, I think, does not require any reiteration. And of course, when we talk about development, the sustainability and today climate change risk has become very important. That needs to be factored. And how do we build a holistic mechanism which can drive this entire thing? Now, India in the 21st century, of course, we are talking about the SAGAR vision, and a very senior diplomat has once commented that what is the SAGAR vision without the UDA? And the government has been very aggressively pushing a lot of mega initiatives like the Sagar Mala, inland water transport, and many other aspects. But somehow the underwater domain awareness or the underwater UD, as Uday sir has also been talking about, that has not found mention. And many times in the government, the letter becomes more important than the spirit. I mean, when you say letter and spirit, because the UD word is not included, many times we have to face a closed door. Because when we include in the mandate UD, then only we'll consider you. That's the kind of response that we get. But I think slowly the importance of the UDA is being understood and a lot of support is coming. And when we talk about the Atmanirbharta, as I mentioned, the import of technology from the West has severe limitations in our waters. So it is not by choice, but it is by compulsion that Atmanirbharta or indigenous development has to become important for us. And we have to really understand the tropical conditions and how to overcome or mitigate the tropical challenges. And of course, digital transformation will become very, very important. And today there's a term called marine spatial planning, which is being talked about. I'll discuss. So the capacity and capability building becomes very important. So this is the framework, UDA framework that we have proposed. If you look at it, the four stakeholders, whether it is strategic security, which is both include internal and external. I mean, our river systems are very important. There are transboundary rivers that need to be dealt with, and the threats are extremely critical now. Blue economy, of course, I mean, India wants to become a 5 trillion economy and beyond. So the maritime sector has to contribute. I mean, we are a maritime nation after all. Unless we look at the blue economy, I think we will really miss out a lot. Then sustainability, climate change, and then of course, how to bring in more science and technology into it. But if you look at the vertical construct, as of now, our understanding of our own waters or underwater is very, very minuscule. A lot of effort is required. So there has to be a bottom-up approach. Typically, we have been following a top-down approach. We not only import technology, but we also import the strategy and or the deployment strategy. So it does not work in our water. So there has to be a bottom-up thrust, sensing, analysis, and regulation. And if you look at this cube, the smaller cubes represent the various aspects that need to be covered, but it also represents the opportunities that our young India has. So the demographic bulge or demographic advantage or disadvantage, whatever you want to call it, this can open up a huge opportunity for the young people. The same thing, to make it more simpler, we have divided into various stakeholders can collaborate. I mean, something like underwater degradation. I mean, and particularly I'm talking about the acoustic degradation, the underwater radiated noise. It is very important for the Navy, but it is also now very important for the environmentalists and the ship designers and shipbuilders. India can become a very major shipbuilding hub. So all of them can come together and invest on this acoustic capacity building. Similarly, sediment management. The tropical waters are very different. Different stakeholders can pull in resources and take things forward. So now going forward, the user academia industry partnership, there are a lot of already schemes that have been initiated by the government. This just needs to be tweaked to suit the UDA framework. I will not go into the details of this. The marine spatial planning, as you can see, is the spatiotemporal mapping. This is a real-time map drawn for underwater noise due to shipping, but from the AIS data. But I'll not spend too much time on this. I think marine spatial planning is, this can be done across various sectors, even in the freshwater system, whether it is resource mapping or it is also sustainable mapping or climate change risk mapping. So when we talk about the UDA framework, we talk about all the three things: policy intervention. We have to align with the global policy. We have to have the regional policies and also SOPs for various organizations and how they all can be aligned for a larger cause. The second is the technology intervention, marine spatial planning or the digital transformation. I mean, marine spatial planning is nothing but the manifestation of the digital transformation, but that needs to be field validated. And a lot of AI and ML or the data analytics and robotics will come in here. And when we talk about the acoustic capacity and capability building, to see, to understand, and to share, I'll talk about this in a little while more. And the specific R&D and indigenous effort will become very important. So when we say acoustic capacity and capability building, to see includes the sensors and the platform that will carry the sensors. So this will include autonomous underwater vehicles and even surface platforms who can really take these sensors. And also it is not possible for us to cover the entire region with sensors. So how do we build smart systems which can build the modeling and simulation and minimize the deployment? Because the global south will not be able to afford that kind of sensor deployment. The second is, once the data is recorded, how do we make that data usable? A lot of it will be noise and various, I mean, even the tropical conditions will distort the data. So how do we carry out pre-processing? And this will require indigenous effort. And also, I mean, from the classified, I mean, the data security perspective also, I don't think we can take help from anybody else. And there has to be a lot of indigenous effort in this. And the third is to share the inputs that we have or the information we have in the real time. How do we make it happen, whether it is through some portable devices or mobile apps, and various technology solutions are there today, and how do we make it happen? I have talked about this modeling and simulation because this will be the key. I mean, many times the West tries to say that a lot of sensors need to be deployed, which becomes absolutely unviable. So how do we build that, and how do we do these, carry out this modeling and simulation is something very important. And this can give opportunity to many startups to come forward and contribute to this. And source path receiver model is to how to make it more rooted to the real world situation in our waters. And these shallow water acoustic measurements have been done by the West. I mean, this is a proper way of understanding the acoustic propagation and acoustic characteristics in the underwater domain. So if you look at swarms across the world, the first such system was the SOSHU sound surveillance system and its various versions. I mean, IUSS, SURTAS, and Fishhook system, which was done in collaboration with Japan. One of the major such facility was the Point Sur Lighthouse, which was driven by the Naval Postgraduate School. And it was like a complete underwater lab where all the new sonar systems or the underwater systems were tested in the real world condition. And Asia X was one such important thing. The first two were in the temperate waters, but Asia X was the first such exercise in the tropical waters of the South China Sea. So this has a history and we need to understand. And that was followed by the Underwater Great Wall Project, steered by the Americans, but the Chinese participated. Asia X, the Chinese participated, and Underwater Great Wall Project is what is being steered by the Japanese, by the Chinese. And this is a very important project and a lot of learning for us to do something similar in the Indian Ocean region. So what next? We have to prioritize the UDA. So geopolitically, we have to have a regional approach. It cannot be driven by nations. So IORA, BIMSTEC, and these are the important forums where we can take it forward. And I think India should be a capacity and capability building partner. A lot of site-specific R&D and innovation. So swarms in the IOR is something I would propose. And optimizing resource and expertise will be very, very important. And we have to integrate security and growth as very well stated in the SAGAR vision of the Honorable Prime Minister. And the Quad has been talking about greater public good because the Indo-Pacific region, the big nations have not been able to get enough support from the smaller nations. So how do we make this reach out to the smaller nations? And small islands are facing a lot of problems. So I think the greater public good can be delivered if we have a comprehensive UDA framework as proposed by us. So typically, last two slides, sir. So typically, when we talk about acoustic capacity and capability building or any such new initiatives, outreach, engage, and sustain would be the key. I mean, outreach is to sensitize more people. I mean, this is just one of such effort to sensitize everybody about what is UDA and how it needs to be taken forward. And once we have done the initial outreach part or sensitizing part, the engaging at multiple levels, youngsters, UDA fellowships and various other internship opportunities, and also with the bigger organizations in terms of specific MOUs. And sustain is to have specific projects on policy intervention and technology interventions. And of course, the structure of the Center of Excellence I would like to propose is a research center which supports multidisciplinary research, incubation center which supports innovation, skilling and leadership center which does hands-on curriculums, and academic center because a lot of academic programs are required. I don't see any academic program in anywhere in the country. We have been lucky to get 10 courses approved by the AICT, and we will be starting them very shortly. And of course, a policy or a strategy center. So my last slide, MSP at a global level, I think India is well positioned to drive this. I mean, the entire digital transformation can be driven by India. Skilling at a regional level, innovation for the world, multidisciplinary research, community engagement, and a comprehensive and an inclusive framework as presented in the structured manner by the UDA framework. So thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Arnab. I think that was very comprehensive, and you will bear with me for requesting you to finish.
Absolutely.
The prescribed time limit. Now, I think that gives us a very broad, I would say, and comprehensive overview of underwater domain and the policy relevance. On that note, I think it's the right segue for us to welcome and give the floor to Dr. Ajay Kumar. Dr. Kumar, all yours, sir, and you have all of 15 minutes. I should call you Professor Kumar.
You can call me Ajay, that was best. But thank you very much. Such a pleasure. I must thank you, Arnab Das. And after him, really, I think it's always a pleasure to hear the domain of UD. Nothing much that really can be added or supplemented. Let me just give my few thoughts. I just want to make 4 or 5 points. The first thing which I want to say, I think we have a lot of importance that is given to space domain these days, but as much as potential that space is going to have, I think the next decades, the importance of UDA can only be compared with this new area of exploration or domain of exploration which human endeavor is likely to see. And like we are doing in the space, I think time is ripe for India to actually devote equal, if not more, effort in the UDA domain. It is both Commodore Bhaskar as well as Commodore Das has said this. I think in SAGAR, which is a vision of our Honorable Prime Minister, there cannot be much to do unless you incorporate UDA as part of it, and the huge importance that it is going to have. In this regard, I think, we really have lagged over a period of time, and we have opportunity that we should actually try to learn and take the lead. And we have demonstrated in several domains, most recently in the digital domain, how India, which was a laggard till very late, has now emerged as one of the digital technologies. And I think we should learn from countries like Norway, we should learn from countries like Singapore, we should learn from countries like US and Japan, and we should develop capabilities so that we are able to take maximum advantage of it. I think the point was made that blue economy is, UDA will form a very important part of the blue economy. It is, despite being a very maritime being a very big part of our country in the past, in the history of late, the importance of maritime into the contribution of India's economy has dwindled. But as we can see now, government has started giving increasing importance to this. A Department of Fisheries was set up separate, a department was set up in 2019. But then fisheries is again just one part of the marine resources. There is a whole lot of other things which are there, energy, minerals, and a whole lot of strategic interests which are there. So I think while Department of Fisheries is a good step, if government was to give a holistic developmental approach to UDA, we can expect that in the next 25 years during the Amrit Kal, we can easily expect our blue economy, the Indian blue economy, to be $1 trillion. And that is the second point which I wanted to make, that we really are looking at a big opportunity for us when we look at the UDA. The third point which I wanted to make was, and again, Commander Das mentioned this, I think one has seen huge focus on collection of data as part of the UDA. And in the Indian Ocean region, this data collection activity has started in right earnest. But unfortunately, India is not a major player in this whole data collection activity. We are aware of the Chinese research vessels, multiple number of them, which are coming to the Indian Ocean region and collecting data, given the fact that data is going to be the major determinant of whether it is marine spatial planning, whether it is for strategic purposes, whether it is to be able to design better technological solutions to deal with the marine domain. Each of this data is going to be of utmost importance, and therefore I think India should significantly ramp up its act to collect more data, so that we are in the coming years able to develop better technology, better solutions which are relevant from our context. The fact is, and that leads me to my next point, and that is regarding collection of data, development of technology. We have, remained dependent on many of the advanced technologies in the past. Of late, we have seen some change in this trend. But as far as underwater domain is concerned, we have largely been dependent on import from friendly foreign countries. And they have made us pay through the nose for those technologies. Moreover, it also leads to long-term dependence on those people. It leads to strategic dependence, because in most of these, there is a possibility for the country providing the technology to be able to take your data as well. So therefore, we need to, step up our effort. And that's the fourth point which I want to make, is to step up the effort with respect to development of UDA technology. Again, Commander Das has already mentioned the technologies developed in the temperate region, in the polar regions by the West, will not be appropriate for us, and we need tropical technologies. In fact, it is also, in a way, disappointing to see that even for tropical region, it is the US and other countries who have taken the lead to develop technologies much before we could do it. And I would here like to talk about the first effort which the Navy did in August 2022, when I was still the Defense Secretary, and they did the IDEX Sprint Challenge, which for the underwater domain, which was the first such effort in the country. Mentioned there was 75 challenges, which is a huge number to go out and give at one go. 75 challenges were announced by Indian Navy in August 2022. But what was even more response, I must say that under IDEX, the response doesn't mean you can just give a casual response. It is something where people respond with their ability to actually provide a solution to the challenge. For those 75 challenges that were offered by Navy, there were 1,106 responses that were received within a month. And within a couple of months, Navy selected 114 or 115 of those as winners. This shows the depth of capability that does exist in the country to be able to address UDA-related problems. It is for us to be able to tap that capability. So these included a huge range of areas like blue-green lasers for underwater applications, automated weapons swarms, drones, artificial intelligence for underwater domain, etc. Of the issue last Navy organized Swabalamban, where most of the 75 challenges, the prototypes were actually showcased in a national seminar by the Indian Navy. Again, I would say this is absolutely remarkable performance on behalf of the various startups and the research worked before it. So I am extremely optimistic on the issue of Indian, innovation ecosystem, including all stakeholders, research labs, DRDOs, startups, academia, to be able to find solutions which are absolutely indigenous. And if we do this act correctly, we will be able to do it. The fifth point, which I just want to briefly mention, and this was touched by Commander Arnab, I think this is a golden opportunity for India to create a talent pool of people with UDA knowledge. Why do I say golden opportunity? Because we have to create this talent pool for our own requirements. We need to have academia focus more on acoustics. I do not think we have enough, focus on acoustics. Now we see increased focus on space, but on underwater domain acoustics, we still do not find enough level of interest. And once we have developed these people, we have opportunity not only to meet our own requirements, but use it as a great source for sending our people across the world. Because in the coming years, like I mentioned, space, underwater is going to be one of the major areas of exploration by human activity world over. And if India can create the resource, it has an opportunity to dominate the talent pool of the world in this regard. The last point which I want to make before I conclude is one of the challenges with UDA which I foresee in our governance structure is that this is truly multi-stakeholder and large number of government agencies and organizations are involved. And we all know what happens when large number of agencies are involved and they have to work in a coordinated manner. I tried to just list out who would be the people who will be involved in a UDA context. So we here are looking at both central government and the state government. We are looking at security agencies, we are looking at military, we are looking at the space, all the agencies including dealing with space. We're looking at economic ministries like fisheries, petroleum and natural gas. We're looking at mines and all the other economic sectors who are going to be potentially affected by the blue economy. We're looking at environment ministry, huge sustainability implications, looking at all academic and scientific ministries and departments. We are looking at industry and startups of the, and we are also looking at the fishermen and other coastal communities. Now, this is a complex set of stakeholders which need to be brought together in a coordinated manner, and is therefore for India to be able to take a significant role in the UDA domain of the world. My own feeling is that it is very important that we create a good coordination mechanism for being able to create an impact. And the last bit which I think is of tremendous importance and still not we have again not done enough work in this regard, is the opportunity of seabed mining. We are now aware that International Seabed Authority is in process of allowing seabed mining very shortly. We have two areas which have been allocated to us. There is untold wealth in these in terms of minerals and rare earths, and our capability to go into deep sea is still limited as compared to US and China. in even Japan and some other countries, France, etc. I think we need to have, this is going to be a huge resource base which is going to become available to the world in the coming years, in the coming 5 to 10 years. And unless we have put our act together, I think we are only now looking at India going up to 6,000 kilometers meters, whereas the world has gone up to 10,000 meters deep sea. I think there's a big gap which we need to bridge so that we can actually also participate in this open sea, deep sea mining opportunity. So in all, let me conclude by saying this one sentence. I think underwater domain offers humongous opportunities, and it is for us, all those associated with the sector, both in all respects, technology, strategic, policy, to be able to come up with a roadmap which could help India exploit these opportunities. Once again, thank you very much, and it's a great learning experience for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ajay Kumar. Very lucid, very comprehensive. Perhaps reflective of your long years in the bureaucracy, compressing many previous notations into something compact that the minister can possibly hoist. But thank you. And I just want to pick up one last observation which you made, which I think is spot on, about the inadequate capacity that India has in the entire maritime domain. Forget deep sea mining, which you have referred to. And I think one statistic, which I'm sure we can take forward in the Q&A when we discuss this, is that in 2023, and 9 years after SAGAR, Prime Minister Modi had announced, India still does not have a single port, a major port that is listed in the world's top 20 ports. We've just made a start with Vizag, but I just thought that stark reality check about our maritime inadequacy in terms of capacity. But let me leave that there for the moment and we'll come back to it. Allow me now to welcome Admiral Karve. Hey, the floor is all yours.
Yeah, good evening to all of you, and my sincere thanks to Director of MRC, Dr. Arnab Das, and thank you, Commodore Uday Bhaskar. I would also like to thank my previous preceding speaker, Dr. Ajay Kumar, for having highlighted some very, very important issues pertaining to our UDA. Now, having come from a very marine sort of experience and marine background with so many years at sea, and with my specialization being the underwater domain, anti-submarine warfare, and I can talk with some conviction about the challenges that we face pertaining to the underwater domain. The underwater domain, like some of the previous speakers have mentioned, can you see me? I'm okay. Underwater domain is very much like the outer space. It has not been explored. Rather, I would say that the underwater domain is far less explored as compared to the outer space. And to my mind, this is a space which poses tremendous challenges in very many terms. A human being cannot survive underwater, nor can a machine. The pressures, the temperatures, they are really crushing. But still, we need to have a better understanding, better knowledge of the this space. As rightly pointed out earlier, the oceans occupy nearly 70% of the earth. They are a lifeline. They are a lifeblood. No, the earth cannot survive without this. But at the same time, the ocean also is a source of several kind of threats to every nation, and certainly to ours. And they are both conventional and unconventional threats. And if you were to just list out some of these, if you talk of the conventional threats, of course, it is from state actors who ply the open seas. The seas are, after all, the global commons. Anybody can move out there without being challenged. But equally, you have the non-state actors and you have the non-conventional, the non-traditional threats, such as you have piracy and robbery, which is very, very rampant in the Indian Ocean. You have drug running, which is also very rampant because the sources of drugs. you have illegal fishing, you have climate change, you have gun running, you have human trafficking, all kinds of threats to law and order, as well as to the survivability of even small nations. Now, particularly the small nations in the Indian Ocean region. Whenever we interact with them, we find that their biggest concern, because the seas and the oceans around them, for example, if you take the tiny islands in the Indian Ocean, which like, for example, Mauritius or Maldives, the major concern for them is the maritime security. And they are always feeling the pinch or the challenge from a threat from any of these non-traditional sources as well as the traditional sources. But more than anything else, today in India and for us, the challenge of the underwater domain is mainly from the submarine threat, the underwater deployments by countries from the region, from outside the region. And in this regard, I would like to point out particularly the profile of the PLA Navy and what they have been up to. Till 2008, when piracy first appeared in the Indian Ocean, in the Gulf of Aden off the coast of Somalia, we did not find any Chinese naval or PLA Navy presence in the Indian Ocean. But surprisingly, after that until today, they have exponentially expanded their presence, and not only of their ships and warships, support ships, but equally of the submarines. I mean, this is for the first time that we see that the PLA Navy has started deploying their submarines, and these are the strategic submarines who are now on a regular basis, constantly, I would say, for several months in a year, deployed in the deep waters of the Indian Ocean. And it is this challenge that poses a great strategic, is of great strategic importance for us from our national security point of view. Besides their deployments, we also have a situation where over the years, last 10 to 15 years, they have now, in a progressive manner, established themselves in several ports in the Indian Ocean. You find them in the Hambantota port in Sri Lanka. You find them as they have developed their first overseas military base in Djibouti in the Gulf of Aden. And they also have a presence in the port of Gwadar in Pakistan, as well as in a port in Myanmar. So it is with a particular design, with a particular intention, that you find that these ship and submarine deployments, the development of ports that the PLA Navy is engaged in, and this momentum has picked up in the last 10 to 12 years, and it is now here to stay, so to say. Besides the naval assets, you also find that the PLA Navy deploys its several survey ships, and you have reports of these ships coming. These survey ships are also, not only carrying out scientific surveys and scientific research, they are collecting data, all kinds of data of the ocean waters of the Indian Ocean, and of course with the intention of building a good data based on how these sound profile, how to build the sound profile, what is the sound profile of the waters of the tropical water of the Indian Ocean, which is so much more different than the waters in which they operate, usually in the South China Sea or the North China Sea. So they have been here for several years now, and particularly you find the ship Yuan Wang 6, Yuan Wang 5, you have other ships as well who are constantly present over here. You have the Yang class 22, you have the Xi'an 3 oceanographic ship. And these ships not only carry out oceanographic research, surveys, data collection, but they also act as submarine support ships very often. And they also monitor the space activities, satellite. They have satellite monitoring, they have missile monitoring capability. So this kind of activity that has been going on certainly has not remained outside our purview. We have noticed this. We continuously track them. But the fact of the matter is that we can do this only so long as they are on the surface. What about below the surface? What about underwater? This is a challenge that actually UDA is all about. From the security, when we talk of national security, this is the challenge I think that we need to look at. And Arnab has mentioned that some nations have deployed certain equipment, certain devices, certain surveillance systems. He mentioned about sources, he mentioned about the Great Wall. And whether we need this or not, these are very resource intensive, requires a lot of time, a lot of effort. So how do we do that? That apart, what about underwater domain exchange of information? Because after all, as Dr. Ajay Kumar rightly mentioned, we are far short of any kind of meaningful research and scientific exploration of the deep waters, the deep oceans, even in the Indian Ocean, what to say of other oceans. So we have a long way to go, because all this information is so necessary for us to develop underwater domain models, the propagation, the sound propagation models, the reverberation characteristics, the sound dissipation models. Underwater domain is a very research oriented activity, and unless you have enough information about all this, it will be difficult for us to develop any kind of technology that can help us locate, track, detect the underwater objects, particularly submarines. And increasingly, today we have a situation where manned submarines are no longer may not be required. You have robotics, you have unmanned underwater vehicles, and they're also called gliders. And PLA Navy is already well ahead of even the US Navy in having developed these, and they are indeed deploying them in the Indian Ocean. As we all know, there is the UNCLOS which defines your EEZ, and ships cannot enter into EEZ of other countries and territorial water. But what about submarines? What about these underwater remotely operated vehicles? The ship can stay outside, but deploy these objects into your waters to collect information for any kind of purpose that they may have intended. So the underwater domain is now a great challenge, particularly in the Indian Ocean region. So how do we deal with all of this? There are several countries that comprise the littoral of the Indian Ocean, and you already have so many organizations and forums where countries have come together, such as mention was made of the IORA, mention was made of BIMSTEC. There is also the IONS. So, and there is the Indian Ocean Tuna Convention. There are several of these organizations and forums which countries are already participating. But I think a time has come now under the SAGAR initiative to discuss the initiatives under UDA in a more meaningful manner, so that there is a collaborative approach. UDA, as has been brought out by Dr. Arnab Das and a previous speaker, Dr. Ajay Kumar, is a humongous effort. Requires not only interdisciplinary, interagency, it requires enormous resources. And I would also put it that it will require international effort. It will require the maritime nations of the region to also come forth and contribute in whichever little way they can. And not only the nations of the Indian Ocean, but even other countries. For example, now under the Quad, you have the 4 countries. They have come together and committed themselves to what is called the Indo-Pacific MDA, Maritime Domain Awareness Initiative, where the nations have agreed to exchange information, share information, to build a common maritime picture of the surface maritime domain. So, how do we do this for the underwater domain? This is something which we really need to think about. We need to sensitize the other countries of the need to exchange information, whatever can be, whatever is possible. perhaps even set up a center. You have set up the Indian Navy took the initiative to set up what is called the Indian Ocean, the IFC IOR, the Information Fusion Center, Indian Ocean region, which is very fully functional in Gurgaon, and it has representatives for at least more than 15 countries. And this was just set up about 5 to 7 years ago. And over the period now, this has become a full-fledged center with representatives from other countries, and each one benefits from getting information about the maritime domain. So similarly, my suggestion is to have a center, and that is my last point, where at the national level, all these interagencies, the multiple agencies can come together, coordinate with each other, and if required, get support and commitment from other like-minded friendly countries also to set up underwater maritime domain awareness center. I think this is the main point that I wanted to make. And with that, I come to the end of my talk. I can see Dr. Uday Bhaskar, Honorable Uday Bhaskar is raising his hands. So, so that is the last point that I wanted to make. I hope I have not crossed the time limit.
No, thank you, Abhay, and sorry again for more in terms of being timekeeper. I want to thank all our panelists, Dr. Kumar, Admiral Karve, and Commander Das, for providing a very comprehensive overview. My request again is to all our participants. I think the numbers have increased. Please keep your phones on mute till you are recognized, just to reduce the echo. And since I'm unable to see all the names, I'm going to request Arnab to look at the participation and please recognize maybe 3 at a time. And the request again is please make pithy observations or pertinent questions, and then we will ensure that the 3 speakers have an opportunity towards the end to respond to some, if not all, the observations and questions. So I'll mute myself and hand over to Arnab. Arnab?
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. And I also would like to thank both Dr. Ajay Kumar, sir, and Admiral Karve, sir, for very, very insightful and very important observations. And I think, as all of you agree, UDA is extremely important and relevant, and urgent measures are required. So to bring a different perspective, I would request Dr. Satish Shenoy, sir, who has been at the forefront of the MSP initiative of the Government of India, and he has been a researcher for a very long time, and he has headed some very important organizations in the country, both NIOT and INCOIS, and the Ministry of Earth Sciences. Dr. Shenoy, sir, I would request you to kindly make your comments, or if you have any questions also for the panelists, I would request you to.
Thank you. Thank you, Arnab. Thank you very much for giving me an opportunity to make few remarks at this webinar. I just want to be very quick and make 3 points. Let me start from where the former Secretary Sri Ajay Kumar has mentioned that like space, the oceans have not received the kind of importance so far, which should have been, because ocean is the last frontier of humankind, and it is much more important. Of course, space as well as ocean, both are important. One good positive thing which is happening in the last few years is that government has recognized this fact, and government launched the Deep Ocean Mission as a large mission mode project to develop several things which are pertaining to the oceans. It has 7 verticals. Most important is the manned submersible, and there are other verticals. Other one is to provide the climate forecasts, like sea level rise, increasing storm surges, cyclones, etc., etc. Then the marine biotechnology, marine biodiversity, and the mineral resource mapping. there is no doubt that the earlier decades, the importance was finding the energy sources in the ocean. That's how many oil companies, they found the oil reserves in the oceans. And now that scenario is going to change in the coming decades, and the countries will compete to find the resources in the oceans. So we have to be prepared for that, and that underlines the importance of underwater domain in all aspects. The second point I would like to just mention, because there are strategic and security experts in this panel, like what happened in the attack of the terrorist attack by Hamas in Israel. They used sort of gliders to cross over the border. So we have to be very careful now that it is not going to be a conventional expected way of attacks, which we can expect from either the terrorist organizations or the rogue countries itself, which we have now few of them in the world. So we have to be prepared that such very unconventional and very rogue type of attacks can happen along our long coastline, because we have nearly 8,000 kilometers of a coastline, and we have to the strategic experts or the security experts should look into those aspects as well from the point of view of underwater domain. And the third point is, of course, the MRC has taken up that as a major goal, that capacity building. In my opinion, one reason why the underwater domain didn't catch up that much attention is that our capacities were low. As Dr. Arnab mentioned earlier, there were no universities, no IITs which are offering a full-fledged course in underwater acoustics or underwater imaging or underwater communication, etc., etc. So the efforts remained very isolated here and there for sort of small requirements to meet the requirements. So otherwise, we have not invested much in building that capacity, and that has to be taken up in a larger scale, and that should happen so that we will have plenty of youngsters who would like to join these kind of activities and use the new techniques like artificial intelligence or machine learning techniques, and take advantage of those kind of techniques. So these are the 3 points I just want to underscore and mention about that here. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you very much. It really brings a different perspective, and which is extremely important. I mean, research has to be there, and capacity building would be a very, very important aspect of that. I would open this up if there is anybody in the audience who would like to make a comment or would like to ask a question to the panelist. The floor is open. We have, yes, Mr. Aditya Narayan, you may kindly go ahead. Make it a very short question, and yeah, please go ahead.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir, for this seminar, and thank you to all the panelists and also to Muralidharan, sir. He's also there. I met him at my college event. So my question is regarding, as A.R. Karve sir mentioned, regarding the use of unmanned vehicles and underwater vehicles inside water. So they can also be used for the purpose of naval warfare. So are we prepared enough to deal with use of such devices for naval warfare and its humanitarian implications? And is there a document, like is there any kind of document which kind of contains the Indian state practices regarding naval warfare or laws made by India, specifically made by India regarding the naval warfare?
Admiral Karve, sir.
So, okay, thank you, Aditya, for that very pertinent question. Indeed, remotely operated vehicles or robotic vehicles underwater, which fly underwater, this is something of the future. but some countries have already started deploying these. And the information that we have is PLA Navy, as would be expected, being a technologically advanced Navy, has already developed these systems. As far as the Indian Navy is concerned, as far as we are concerned, my information is that some kind of progress is there, but it hasn't really reached the stage where we would want it to. But having said that, I must also put it across that the entire naval warfare cannot rely only on unmanned vehicles. Just like you see in Ukraine and other places, it is not only about drones and drone warfare. You have manned aircraft also. Each one has its own purpose. And similarly, in underwater warfare also, the manned submarine, the strategic submarines, even the conventional submarines are not going to be replaced simply because these new devices are available. They are available and they will be deployed and developed. They will have specific purposes and specific use in specific circumstances. So these kind of tactics, these kind of deployment strategies will have to be developed, and I'm sure that will happen in future. Just to give an example, these kind of platforms are good for, let's say, launching, an underwater commando, what we call the marine commando. Or if you want to launch or lay mines, underwater mines on the sea floor, these kind of platforms are useful. But I will leave it at that. Yes, these are being developed, but their use will be limited.
Thank you, sir. If there are no other questions, Commodore Anil Jay Singh, sir, is there. He not only is a very senior naval officer, but also represents the industry. Sir, would you like to make some comments?
Thank you very much. That was a very interesting overview of the underwater domain awareness, and in the context of SAGAR. So it's obviously what has emerged is that we are very well aware of the challenges of the undersea domain, the sort of opportunities it offers, not only from a security perspective, but also from a larger resource for our future sustainable development. So my question is, how far down, and we've also, from what we've heard, we've also realized that we still have some way to go before where we would like to be. So my question is there a distinct roadmap that the government of India has developed so far on how to go about, not only exploiting the underwater resource, but looking at the entire underwater domain, and how and where does India want to be, let's say hypothetically Amrit Kaal 2047, or anywhere en route. So till we don't have a roadmap, till we don't have distinct milestones, we just keep assuming that things will happen and keep highlighting what we need to do. But what is happening? What are we doing to make sure it happens when it should happen? That's my question.
Dr. Ajay Kumar, sir, you may like to respond, not in official capacity, but as somebody who has been dealing with this for a long time.
Yeah, let me not be very pessimistic, or no, I'm not. When I was there, I really did not see that much of emphasis on underwater. Having said that, of late, I have seen, like I mentioned about this example of the Navy Sprint challenge, there is increased desire to be more independent indigenous solutions to a lot of the requirements that from a Navy perspective has. So hopefully this and that whole experiment, if I may say so, because this was the first time at such large scale solutions, startups were involved, academia was involved, and solutions were pursued. That example was fairly successful. The result has been very successful, actually. But I think there is also equal need on the civil commercial side from the economic perspective. So yes, hopefully Navy will build on its experience of the Sprint and Swavlamban, but similar
for taking into account the needs of civil commercial sector also needs to be done. Second is, and I think that has been brought out very clearly, I think we need to have a holistic approach, and I think Commander Das is working relentlessly to bring all this to the attention of the policy decision makers, so that we very often today we are putting efforts which are in some ways isolated. Each one is looking at from the perspective of their own requirements. I think we need to have a coordinated, holistic approach where all these resources and capabilities can be pulled together. And that will enable a much more accelerated, capability development and solution development as far as we are concerned. So in all, I would say, I think more needs to be done. That is where we are.
Thank you, sir.
I'd also request Commander Uday Bhaskar sir to make a comment on this aspect, what Commander Anil Jaisingh sir has built up, because sir has been in the maritime strategy domain for few decades. So, sir, I would request you also to make a couple of comments. I mean, how do you see this whole evolution?
Thanks, Arnab. I just want to extend the observations made both by Commodore AJ Singh, and by Dr. Ajay Kumar. I think the first point that AJ has made is very pertinent, that if we look at India and the maritime domain in a more holistic manner, going back to the Vajpayee years, I think 2 decades is a reasonable time span. Much of the policymakers focused on the maritime domain at the apex, which is the PMO, has been very earnest and yes, definitely aspirational, but it has remained elusive. And now there are various reasons, and I think Dr. Kumar, who was most recently Defense Secretary, has also drawn attention to this, that there are many agencies, many ministries which are involved when it comes to the maritime domain. And we are aware, and I'm saying this with a tinge of sadness, that over the last 3 or 4 decades, what we have seen, that the way the bureaucracy is structured, our system is structured, I call it an octopus. Very often, 9 people in a committee, whether it's of secretaries or professionals or ministers, are able to give perhaps 11 good reasons why a proposal cannot move forward without either turf being protected or certain issues being placed for higher levels of authority for resolution, meaning kick it upstairs to the PMO. But so far we haven't had, except in Prime Minister Modi's case, where one person can take the decision. But we know that when it comes to maritime issues, lead times are long. So whether it is Sagar Mala of Vajpayee or Sagar of Modi, the actual action on the ground has been limited. And if we have a few scholars and think tank people and policymakers in our group this afternoon, I think one exercise that may prove rewarding would be to do a reality check of what has Sagar actually achieved in the last 8 or 9 years, since PM Modi's visit to the 3 islands and when he made the speech, and breaking it down into tangibles, and how from the center in Delhi, it has given a certain, shall we say, made the states stakeholders, all the coastal states. What have they derived from Sagar, and how can we take this forward? So I'm just reiterating the point made by Anil, that we create reports, we have task forces, we have very earnest recommendations, but the actual movement on the ground is limited, and part of it is also because of a paucity of funds. So of course, now we have a maritime advisor, and it was hoped that the National Maritime Advisor would be able to pull all these efforts together and give it some kind of policy directivity, and let us see what is the low-hanging fruit. So far, I have not seen any low-hanging fruit. If anybody in this group is able to share it, I think after Mumbai and beefing up the Coast Guard and ensuring that we have more coastal surveillance, I am not aware of such a major step that has been done, which has actually given you output, tangible output. So that's the first point. And what Dr. Ajay Kumar said, I think now, of course, there is greater awareness. But will this awareness translate into, the kind of action that we are seeking? To me, it still seems a question mark. And if I have the floor now, Arnab, I'd like to make a couple of other related observations. If not, I can wait my turn when get all the others. There may be a few others who might want to make some comments, those who have joined us in this session. So
anybody would like to make a comment? The floor is open and you may like to give your comments.
If I may just add to what Comrade Uday Bhaskar said, I think, sir, we have made some very tangible advances in MDA, but whether commensurate tangible advances have been made in UDA is questionable. I think in MDA we are moving, with the IFR IOC, the multi-mission deployment of our ships, the P8I deployments. I think at least all the instruments are in place. What are the tangible outcomes that I'm not too sure about, because that's something probably in the classified domain. But certainly, I think some very tangible, even our HADR activities are in a form of maritime domain awareness, actually. But there's not been, I don't think there's been a commensurate underwater domain awareness element which has been sort of integrated into this yet.
No, point taken, and maybe I should have phrased that better. I was saying that after the Mumbai attack, surveillance has received policy attention. Surveillance across the board. And MDA and what Admiral Karve had said about the fusion center, all these are examples. And we are also doing a certain amount of sharing with some of the island states and so on. So I am ticking that box. My real sort of plaint is that when we talk about SAGAR, in 9 years, what have coastal states derived, as security and growth for all in the region? Once we address our coastal states, then we can talk about our neighbors in the ocean. I mean, that's my sort of layered kind of approach to this. But this is an observation. I'll be very happy to be corrected. Perhaps I'm not aware of some of the developments that are happening in the public domain as much as they should be. Back to you, Arnab.
Sir, we'll now go back to the speakers for their final comments, and then it will come to you. I think the Q&A is over, sir. So I'll request Vice Admiral Karve, sir, to make his final comments. And
okay, so I think that was a very interesting discussion, and some very pertinent points have been also made by the speakers and the audience as well. And my final comment is this, that UDA is still in its infancy as far as India is concerned, and we still have many miles to go before we can rest. And the simple reason is because it is a multi-agency. I am really surprised that Dr. Arnab Das and his MRC single-handedly are trying to take up or steer a project that actually ought to be steered at the national government level. And to give you just to cite, as after the 26/11 attacks, when the government decided to set up this NCS MCS, and yours truly was the naval rep as DGNO, trying to coordinate with 17 different ministries and departments to set up this whole architecture, new completely from scratch, set up a maritime security architecture, which was zero on 25/11, and from 26/11, it had to be all set up. We all know we have traveled a long distance. So I am fully aware that it's not an easy job. And just like that, and MDA was one small part of the maritime security architecture. So similarly, the UDA is also going to be a small part of the Indian Ocean security architecture, not only the Indo-Pacific security architecture. It is not going to be easy. It requires enormous support. It requires enormous resources, commitment, national level effort. I would only like to make this final comment that, and we would like to compliment Commander Das for having taken the first baby steps. But it will take a long time before it becomes an elephant, and a long time before we start really running and creating a true, meaningful UDA. But nevertheless, we have taken the first few steps.
Thank you so much, sir. I just want to submit 2-3 things. One is that 10 of our e-learning modules that we have prepared on the various dimensions of the UDA are today uploaded in the government IGOT platform. this is a platform created by the Capacity Building Commission under the PMO to basically make sure that all our decision makers and basically government officials across, I'm told there are 30 million government officials across the center and the states. So it will be accessible to them, and to some extent the relevant modules will be also made compulsory for the key government officials. So in that sense, at least everybody will be sensitized. So this is, I think, a very big initiative at the senior, at the top level in the government. And we also have now the Scientific and Industrial Research Organization approval by the Ministry of Science and Technology. So I think that's another important thing. And I think the Ministry of External Affairs is now seriously considering the UDA framework to kind of at least sensitize the entire Indian Ocean region and the Indo-Pacific on what is the, and I think, when we get into this discussion at the senior level, there is also a worry that our internal capacity also has to keep pace at a similar level. And I think both Admiral Karve sir and Dr. Ajay Kumar sir has mentioned that there are so many stakeholders involved to make it, a coordinated effort is a reasonably big challenge, given the size of our country. But I want to just last one point that I want to bring out. I think this UDA framework can bring enormous opportunities for our youngsters. And I think India is very well placed. The young aspirational young India that we have, I think even the West, whether we talk about US or any other country, they do not have the manpower to deploy. And our people can quickly adapt and quickly learn and really take it. So the entire digital transformation in the underwater domain can be best driven by India is my proposal. And I think between India and China, people trust India more. And I think we have the right kind of aptitude and attitude to take it forward. So that would be my last comment. And I would request Dr. Ajay sir to make his final comments.
I agree with everything that has been said. The point which Admiral Karve mentioned, I think, and which you have also referred to, I think it's very important for UDA to become a national agenda. I want to just say that before coming to Defense Ministry, I had spent a long part of my career doing e-governance and digital. And Digital India, of course, was not there that time, but it was e-governance and national e-governance, etc., both in the state and center level. At least 15 years or more, 20 years I would have spent. And we are all aware that, till about 2014, there were a lot of, there was a NIC and there were a lot of applications which were done, but the actual usage we all knew was largely peripheral. But once Digital India came and once Mr. Modi made it as a way of life, today India is actually the envy of even the leading countries in the world. Everyone is talking about it, the way we manage our COVID and use digital technology to manage COVID and so on and so forth. These are all well-known folklore stories. So my point is, I think the important task is we have to get it into the mind space of the top decision makers in the country, because this is something which has huge potential. And I see that kind of mind space being given to space. For example, even the fact that opening up of the space sector has made a huge difference. Recently, Chandrayaan was created a big splash everywhere. So the point I'm saying is it's very important to put it right on top of the national agenda. I think it's important, if it is possible, that to put UDA in the political, because before the elections, each party will have its agenda, to put it in that manifesto that in the next term they will try to make this as a significant part. And I just wanted to say one thing, sometimes we feel that resources are constrained. And I have heard this several times from top leaders in the country. I have never seen any constraint in resources for the right purposes. So it is a question is we have to be able to actually show that this is the right priority. This time has come and this has such huge potential. I think that is the real task. And if we can do this, we have a significant opportunity here to really make a mark in the UDA. And I think the work that you are doing, Commander Das, I think is a great contribution in this regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you, really, sir. We are really encouraged, not just by your kind words, but your presence in this forum. I'll now hand over to Commodore Ujay Bhaskar, sir, to give his concluding remarks.
Thanks, Arnab. Nothing except to thank everybody for joining us and making this webinar as participatory and eventful as it turned out to be. As always in the SPS events and now with MRC, we request our participants to remain connected. And if you have anything that you want to share about the theme itself, underwater domain and awareness, please feel free to write to us, write to Arnab, and we can even publish your articles or comments. And let us not make this a one-off, but hopefully we should be able to come back to this at least twice or thrice in the year to see what progress has been made in creating greater awareness about underwater domain awareness. So on that note, let me thank Dr. Ajay Kumar, Admiral Karve, Commander Arnab Das, and all of you for being part of this event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.